Hello, my name is Odie Ahi, and I'm happy to be here to have the opportunity to talk about our diversity curriculum that we created at UCSF for our residents. And first and foremost, I am the acting vice chair of diversity, equity, and inclusion for the UCSF Department of Anesthesia. And I have no financial disclosures with commercial interest to disclose. And my presentation does not include discussions of any off-label or investigational use. So after this presentation, I hope you're able to describe a few examples of current 6 steps in the development of a diversity curriculum. Also, I hope that you're able to identify a couple of ways to teach the application of concepts around unconscious bias and allyship so the learner can be intentional in the clinical environment. Furthermore, I hope you're able to apply strategies to address microaggressions and equity themes, and also will provide a space to review evaluation feedback from the pilot curriculum using Kirkpatrick's framework of learner satisfaction and competency from our survey data. So a little bit of background about the journey into the diversity curriculum is essentially when I started at UCSF, I actually also started as a Bridges coach, which is a high intensive teaching position at UCSF for the School of Medicine. Now, in this role, I was able to be part of the Differences Matter orientation with the medical students that they received within their first week. And one of this orientation role is that and this is again before they even have the opportunity to even touch a cadaver, we as Bridges coaches help facilitate conversations around identities and allyship and microaggressions, which are discussed in a facilitated, curated space after we're trained. And concurrently, we have faculty and staff across the campus who have access to DEI training. But what I noticed is that there was a gap in a synchronous, similar interactive exercise for our residents, for perioperative residents in general, and honestly, a synchronous activity for all residents across UCSF. And then after doing further research, I found that this gap actually existed nationally. And so we wanted to focus on a diversity curriculum that was relevant for our perioperative residents because we interact with each other within our workspaces a lot more frequently. And so using current 6 step, we came up with our first step, which is our problem identification. And when we think about that, the question that I think is really highly addressed is, well, why would we even care about this in the first place? Well, it's common knowledge that physicians, actually trainees in particular, and these are trainees in perioperative spaces, they're at risk for burnout. And mistreatment such as discrimination or sexual harassment or verbal abuse, these actually contribute to burnout and even sometimes suicidal thoughts. So New England Journal of Medicine in 2019 published a cross-sectional national survey for general surgery residents when they were taking their ITEs. And what they found was that among over 7,400 residents, 31.1 or 31.9% responded that they had discrimination based on their self-identified gender, and 16.6% reported racial discrimination. Furthermore, patients and patients' families were actually the most frequent sources of gender and racial discrimination. So then that leads and begs the question of the need for skill acquisition around unconscious bias and allyship, how to be an ally, as well as tools to address microaggressions, and then further advanced forms to mitigate unconscious bias. So we did a targeted needs assessment, and we focused on the CA1 residents because the intention was we would pilot the curriculum with them and expand it to all the other trainees within our department. So when they were asked what would an ideal DEI training look like, the responses included learning how to respond or take action against bias and microaggressions. They also responded and said skills acquisition around recognizing and responding to microaggressions and other forms of racism. And another one included an iterative curriculum that continues over a period of time, years. So this led us to the third step in currents, which is goal. So for the curriculum, as it was being developed, the DEI curriculum was based on critical race theory and transformational learning. to where perioperative trainees received a 2-hour workshop on unconscious bias, a 2-hour workshop on allyship, and a 2-hour workshop on microaggression. And this occurred during the year of 2020. And then the following year, the CA1s that had advanced to CA2s then would receive a booster session, an advanced DEI session, focused even more on skill acquisition around mitigating unconscious bias and how to be intentional about that. And the idea essentially is that we would incorporate critical race theory as well as transformational learning. And the theory of transformational learning was used basically focusing on the idea that adult learners can adjust their thinking based on new information. So the workshop design incorporated tenets of the critical race theory with an emphasis on intersectionality that highlights how an individual's various identities can differentially impact their lived experiences among people of color. So this also takes us to our learning objectives, as it was aligned with survey questions and informed activities within the workshop. And some of those learning objectives included how to assess one's own unconscious bias in relation to the workshop exercises in a small group discussion. It also included identifying ways to apply concepts around unconscious bias to be intentional in the environment, and also distinguishing several strategies to address microaggressions, as well as reviewing case scenarios to help us do so. So this leads us now to step 4, educational strategies within current 6 step. So within educational strategies, we recruited co-facilitators with experiences of, or even just interest in performing DEI training from different departments across the campus. And this included pediatrics, internal medicine, emergency medicine, general surgery, obviously anesthesia, orthopedic surgery, otolaryngology, emergency medicine, as I said earlier, but also orthopedic surgery. And the other piece is that as we created a pool of experts and a pool of folks who were really passionate about DEI topics and learning more about that, from that pool, we actually implemented a 1-hour train-the-trainer session, which was implemented a week prior to each workshop. So the facilitator guide that was created for each workshop was reviewed in a very intentional manner, and all questions were answered, just so that we could standardize the way that the learners were receiving their facilitation. In addition, the workshop was virtual due to the pandemic. And so in order to create that safe space, we paired one facilitator for every 5 group of learners, or 5 learners within one group. And that would be just to encourage vulnerable conversations and making sure that different perspectives were shared. The other piece is that the interactive exercises that we pulled from PollEV or Zoom features, they were utilized. And we really tried to minimize didactics to roughly about 10 minutes if we needed it. And this was to provide a platform at a time that we could highlight recent studies that were pertinent to the learning objectives. But for the most part, we really relied on an interactive piece because of, again, we were dealing with residents who really wanted to engage in the topic, as opposed to the didactic piece where they're only having a one-directional form of learning. And so that now takes us to our 5th step, which is the implementation. So for the implementation, we were forced to use a virtual format. However, that actually was a huge advantage in a sense that it allowed for us to use several different facilitators across campuses. So there was no concern about where they're going to park, their ability to get there. And also the thing to think about was that the virtual space allowed for us to expand it to general surgery residents. When the general surgery department caught wind of what we're doing for the anesthesia residents, they wanted their residents to be included. And it just so happened that both trainees ended up having their education didactic protected time on the same day so that we could implement this on a bi-monthly basis. And then part of the implementation included house rules. We wanted to make sure that we always establish a safe space, confidentiality. House rules also included stepping out of our comfort zone and leaving to our growth zone, where we would actually learn and also have permission to make mistakes as we're growing and learning. And part of this included interactive exercises, as has been mentioned before, case scenarios that are actually pertinent to the perioperative space, and then the opportunities to debrief in a large group to get the insights that were shared from our small groups. We also provided the opportunity for self-reflective exercises where each learner could share anonymously in a survey what they were also feeling, experiencing, learning that was very detailed to them, essentially. And then this was coupled with our post-workshop survey. So now this takes us to our sixth step within Kearns, which is evaluation and feedback. Now, we first focused on the learner satisfaction component within Kirkpatrick's framework. And in order to do so, what we did is that we looked at the responses to different statements, all of which included that this workshop showed them a DEI curriculum was important to their training, that this workshop was relevant to their workplace, and that this workshop that they would recommend it to their peers. So for the unconscious bias workshop, you can see that over 95% agreed with all three of these statements. For the allyship workshop, you can see that around 90% or over 90% agreed with all three of these statements. And for the microaggression workshop, you can see that nearly 100% agreed with all three of these statements. And this was with a higher response rate among the anesthesia residents. The surgery residents did not complete the post-workshop survey as much as the anesthesia residents did. And that could be partly due to the fact that it was piloted and based off of the anesthesia department. Now, the results that focused on competency included our unconscious bias workshop. And essentially what we did is we launched a paired t-test analysis that revealed that the post-workshop mean agreements with unconscious bias statements were increased. And this included learners feeling like they knew how to find the term, like to define the term unconscious bias. So that went up, as well as learners believing that they have unconscious biases. That went up after the workshop. And more importantly, the learners believe that their unconscious biases affected their clinical practice and interactions with others. For the microaggression workshop, we did a similar pair t-test analysis over mean agreements, and we saw that there was an increase in statements such as that they were likely to take action at the time that they witnessed a microaggression addressed towards others. The other piece I think that's really impactful is that they felt that they had the tools to address microaggressions that they witnessed. So again, this really was focused on giving the residents the ability to feel like they had some form of skill acquisition in this space to help promote, again, the feeling of being welcome, the feeling of being supported within our residency program. So lessons learned actually from the implementation of this pilot curriculum is that the feedback included that the residents would want more time in the small groups. While in the beginning, there's probably hesitancy in warming up and really braving, leaving your comfort zone. As more individuals spoke and more individuals were vulnerable, I think it encouraged others to do so as well too. So we found that we were running out of time in our small groups. They had more time to get into in-depth discussions, and they wanted more time towards the end, actually. The other piece is that they wanted more breaks, especially in a virtual setting where there was Zoom fatigue, and also, if possible, to actually do this in person. And another lesson learned from this was that a more qualitative analytical approach would have helped inform the curriculum. So that has been implemented in the second round of this diversity curriculum. And the last bit is that the feedback from the previous pilot curriculum has actually helped, or at least has been incorporated within the curriculum that was implemented this past year. And because of this curriculum has actually been received well, ophthalmology residents and orthopedic surgery residents are now also included within the curriculum in asynchronous manner because the departments want also to be involved within this curriculum. So it's slowly expanding across the perioperative space within UCSF and seems to have already been well received. Thank you so much for your time. I'm always happy to answer any questions. I'd like to use the opportunity here to thank Dr. Buscardin and Dr. Hill. I also like to thank Jeanette Tang, Rebecca Chen, and Jillian Ernest for their collaboration in this space. Thank you so much.
Hello, good morning. I'm Solmaz Forsader Manuel. I'm an anesthesiologist on faculty at the University of California, San Francisco. Today, we're going to talk about moving beyond traditional dyad mentor-mentee relationships to talking about practical strategies to attain higher yield, higher impact mentorship programs at your institutions. So I know with this group at AUA, I don't need to belabor the point that effective mentorship is essential for success in academic medicine. Study after study has shown that trainees and aspiring academics that engage in mentoring relationships are more likely to pursue academic careers in research, be awarded grant funding, receive promotions, that effective mentoring relationships are linked to increased career satisfaction, self-confidence, and sense of community, that mentorship is important for recruitment and retention, and mentorship has been shown to help underrepresented members of academia, in particular, overcome the unique barriers they face. Despite the established importance of mentorship, though, mentoring relationships can be challenging to develop and sustain. So up to 3/4 of academic faculty still report not having an effective mentor. So what can we do to help establish and really get the most benefit out of these proven to be powerful relationships? Well, today I want to discuss 4 high-yield, high-impact strategies that I encourage you to implement individually and in your programs. First, encourage better mentee engagement. Mentoring up is a concept I've written about that was adapted from the business concept of managing up. It's a concept that empowers mentees to be active participants in their mentoring relationships. It acknowledges that mentorship is a mutual relationship, and mentees who are proactive participants can help drive that relationship to achieve desired results. So, what does this mean practically? Well, mentees need to be given permission to be the drivers. For example, they should start by choosing their own mentor. While being assigned a mentor is better than having no connection at all, research has shown that mentoring relationships are more successful when mentees reach out and connect with their mentors directly. Identifying their own needs, the type of guidance that would be the most helpful, and the skill set they seek in a mentor yields much more successful matches. Furthermore, in mentee-driven relationships, mentees help their mentor do their job well. So they don't leave the mentor to guess at what their needs are or to remember to reach out to them. They spend time defining their own goals, identifying gaps in knowledge and skills that are barriers to achieving these goals, and then they express their needs clearly and they prioritize discussion points. They show up prepared with an agenda, knowing exactly what they want out of each meeting. They respect their mentor's time. They keep appointments. They follow through on leads and feedback they receive. They take the initiative to maintain the relationship by showing interest in maintaining regular communication. Now, this might mean proactively placing reminders in their calendar to develop a regular cadence of communication with their mentor. When mentees are empowered to drive their mentoring relationships, they're more successful and the results are more likely to serve their needs while also earning the trust and confidence of their mentors. Second, we should be encouraging the development of mentorship networks. All mentors have different strengths and weaknesses. It is not reasonable, however, to depend on a single individual to perfectly fill the role of professional coach, research advisor, sponsor, institutional advocate, and personal confidant. Mentees in academic medicine need to be encouraged to establish a network of mentors who offer diverse perspectives, a complement of insights, a wide range of skills, and various talents. Some advocate for curating a personal board of directors. So proponents of this concept warn that an overly extensive and shallow network of professional contacts doesn't yield the same benefit as a strong, tight-knit inner circle of individuals who fulfill specific roles. In a workshop we held for faculty in our department at UCSF, we asked them to go through the following steps to build their own personal board of directors. So first, they took a personal inventory of their needs. Where would they like support? For example, career focus and development, academic promotion, scholarship opportunities, professional networking, work-life balance. Next, they made a list of people, past and present in their lives, who've served key roles in their development. This included current and former colleagues, classmates, professors, and then they added some people they respect within our field and who have a position or who have carved out a leadership role that they admire. Next, they mapped out their current board of directors. They literally drew a large table on a sheet of paper with seats and they put themselves at the head. And then they started to identify who was already at the table. They evaluated which of their needs are being met and where they have gaps. They looked at the diversity of those seated at their table, who was there with them and who wasn't. And we acknowledged that the more diverse the perspectives, experiences, and identities, the better. And the next step, they rounded out their board. So thinking back to their personal inventory of needs and the gaps they identified in their current board, participants now sought to add potential names. So for example, those interested in finding career focus and development perhaps looked for someone to help them reflect on their values, their personal brand, their goals, and the legacy they're hoping to create. Someone with insight into different paths forward in their career. Those interested in academic promotion identified someone with institutional insights into the requirements of promotion and where their time and energy were best spent. Those interested in professional networking, well, perhaps they sought someone active in a professional organization that matches their profession and scholarly interests. And then we talked through many more examples on how to fill specific gaps in our personal board of directors. And finally, we told everyone it was time to mentor up, to reach out to their potential board members and mentors and take responsibility for building those relationships. Third, train faculty in cross-cultural mentorship and sponsorship. It's great. Our departments are becoming more diverse across all spectrums of underrepresented groups. But that change isn't arriving as fast in upper leadership levels. Mentors today must move past traditional mentoring constructs to recognize and meet the increasingly diverse candidates and trainees where they're at. However, there's very little guidance for would-be mentors on how to successfully bridge cultural and identity differences and to help mentees navigate barriers to academic and professional success. And while having culturally congruent mentors, those that line up with racial and ethnic identity, for example, underrepresentation of certain groups in senior faculty and leadership roles really limits mentoring options. So, to meet the mentoring needs of our departments, all senior and mid-level faculty must be willing and able to mentor diverse mentees, and they need training and encouragement on best practices to do so. All faculty need to receive training in implicit bias and assumptions. A compelling advantage to culturally congruent mentorship is the implicit understanding of how underrepresented identities affect education and career progression. In cross-cultural mentorship, though, the mentor must proactively reflect on social inequities and intersecting structural and institutional biases that shape the experiences of mentees. It requires a significant amount of humility for mentors to explore their own unconscious biases and assumptions and to acknowledge that they exist, and then to actively challenge them. Most institutions now have implicit bias training sessions that all faculty should regularly participate in. Mentors should recognize when their mentees are attempting to function in what may be essentially a foreign culture. Openly acknowledging the challenges of working in a second language, in a second culture, and in an environment where very few role models actually look like them helps to bring up important issues and conversations. Mentors are in a position to validate mentee experiences and to help them navigate these complex cultural, political, institutional, and social norms. Mentors can also help mentees address imposter syndrome. That's the persistent feeling of self-doubt and inadequacy compared to peers that's exacerbated by internalized racism and stereotype threat in underrepresented faculty. The result of these well-documented effects are reduced achievement or recognition of successes and barriers to advancement. Mentors can help reinforce the merit of their mentees' work and actively refute negative stereotypes with examples and introductions to successful underrepresented role models. Senior and mid-level faculty should aim for sponsorship over mentorship. So mentorship is making a connection for someone. It's giving them advice, helping them know when to ask for a promotion, and understanding the process. It's great, but we can do better. Sponsorship is using your position, using your power to give opportunities to someone else who's traditionally been excluded. It's nominating them for positions and letting people know why they would be amazing in that role. It's using your voice for your mentee behind closed doors. Okay, and finally, get to know your mentees authentically. Find opportunities for social interaction, group lunches, other outings. Share experiences and stories that help build trust and humanize the mentoring relationship. Understanding who your mentee is, including their interests and motivations, can also help you understand the way they think and act in a professional environment. Mentors should be open to recognizing the multiple ways, including non-traditional ways, to measure intelligence and success from their mentees of different backgrounds. So cross-cultural mentorship is so important. I'm only brushing on highlights here, but I encourage you to look at my recommended readings and forthcoming articles coming out on this topic. Basically, we need more women chairing anesthesia departments and more people of color setting the agenda at meetings, more queer and trans folks at the table, and we can get there together if we help lift people up in anesthesia. And finally, the fourth and last strategy I want to introduce today to attain higher impact, higher yield mentorship programs for your institutions is reverse mentorship. Reverse mentoring is when junior department members act as mentors to senior leaders. An article in the Harvard Business Review about reverse mentoring details the story of a large company that was struggling to retain younger talent and losing junior members at a high rate. In response, leadership implemented this reverse mentoring program. It paired younger employees with executive team members to mentor them on various strategic and culturally relevant topics. The result? The junior members felt heard and included, and the senior members got outside of their bubble of usual advisors to see things in a different light. The result was a shift in organizational culture, increased optimism, and increased retention. Now, it's not a far stretch to see how this mentoring strategy would benefit academic medicine. Reverse mentorship allows leaders and lifetime faculty members to engage with people in their department who are looking through the same issues, but through different lenses. Forward-thinking organizations across industries are using reverse mentoring, not only to retain their junior members, but to enhance digital skills, social media presence, drive cultural change, and increase inclusivity. Different perspectives make stronger departments. Okay, AUA, this is our call to action. Everyone here knows mentorship is critical to longevity and success in academic medicine. We've undoubtedly all benefited immeasurably from it ourselves. So let's bring others up with us. First, let mentees know that they can and should drive their mentoring relationships. Second, encourage our trainees and faculty to develop deep and meaningful mentoring networks. Third, train yourselves and those in your department to effectively and humbly engage in cross-cultural mentorship. And finally, fourth, learn from reverse mentorship. Everyone here has a role to play in making academic anesthesiology a welcoming place for a diverse set of driven and accomplished individuals who can find their niche area, grow, and thrive. Let's build our field up together.
I'm delighted to have the opportunity to continue this conversation on developing the next generation of academic anesthesiologists. You've heard about creating a diversity curriculum, creating mentoring programs. What I'm going to talk about is creating coaching programs for early career faculty members. I do have a financial relationship in the past as an educational consultant for AMBU Incorporated, and my presentation does not relate to that, nor does it include any discussion of off-label or investigational use. I do want to acknowledge that the land I work on, which is named for the Ute tribe, is a traditional and ancestral home of the Shoshone, Paiute, Goshute, and Ute tribes. My goal for this discussion is to help you recognize the value of coaching in professional development, and then explore opportunities to create a network of faculty with coaching skills as a cost-effective way to build coaching culture at your own institution, as well as opportunities for developing accessible internal coaching programs for trainees, faculty, and staff. So what is coaching? Well, the International Coaching Federation defines coaching as a partnership that stimulates a thought-provoking and creative process that inspires an individual to make the most of their personal and professional potential. And one of the most commonly discussed developmental relationships is mentoring, and you've just heard about that. How are coaching and mentoring distinct? The primary difference is that while both are driven by questions, that is by the coachee or mentee's own goals and questions, mentoring tends to be externally driven. That is, the mentor brings perspective and experience along a common pathway with the mentee and can help give advice and direction to the mentee. In coaching, it's really driven by the coachee, and the coach uses powerful questions, support, and challenge to help the coachee develop their own professional identity, goals, and then strategies for achieving those goals. It's really focused on internal clarity and confidence. So who should have a coach? Well, traditionally, coaching has been reserved for higher level executives and also for remediation. I will say coaching is often not very successful in remediation, in part because those who are marked for remediation often don't have that drive to kind of move that relationship forward. It's often externally driven, and so it's not as effective a coaching relationship. Our vision is for coaching to become an integral component of professional development and wellness across every level, including trainees, faculty, and staff. How can you provide coaches to everybody at your institution? Well, expanding to that extent is limited by cost. Professional certified coaches are expensive, and also just by the supply of certified coaches. There aren't enough of them out there to coach all of our 2,000 full-time faculty members, not to mention our students and our staff. So we faced the question at the University of Utah, how can we increase access to coaching for School of Medicine faculty members as a start? We created an internal coaching program where we invited experienced educators who were known as excellent mentors to join in creating this program, and they are supported by training and a structured workbook. Our goals of the program are to have a low-cost, high-yield program and also to create a sustainable coaching community and network of faculty members who are interested in doing this kind of work. Finally, we wanted to do rigorous evaluation for both actionable insights, which is really quality improvement, and also to develop qualitative and quantitative data on the effectiveness and impact of our program. When we considered what to focus on in the program, if you think about coaching, Atul Gawande's article in the New Yorker on getting a surgical coach is an example of coaching for knowledge and skills, really the technical side of things. And while we think that's very important, what we wanted to focus on here that we thought was more important for that sort of development as a faculty member was developing meaning and purpose. That is, that sort of meaning, your community, your purpose, and using coaching as a way for people to develop their own professional identity and goals. Now, that means you don't have to have coaches who have specific knowledge and skills in the area of the coachee's goals. But it does mean that particularly with internal coaches, you have people who are networked, who are more senior, and who can connect their coachees once the coachees have identified their goals and how to get there with the people who can help teach them the knowledge and skills that they need in order to be successful. The structure of our program, we started pulling it together in 2018, and our first cohort was enrolled in 2019. So it's the University of Utah School of Medicine Early Career Coaching Program. And the primary components are group training and workshops, one-on-one coaching, and a structured workshop. So initially, we recruited highly recognized mentors who were interested in learning to coach, and did workshops on coaching skills, and also worked collaboratively to build this workbook. It's a 38-page workbook that takes people through a 6-month, 6-session coaching program with guided reflections and topics to address. Once we created that coaching workbook, which partly served to educate our future coaches in coaching skills, we recruited our first cohort of coachees. We had a kickoff meeting where we introduced the idea of coaching to the coachees. Many of them have as models mentoring and advising relationships, some of which have been dysfunctional, and don't really understand this concept of the internally driven coaching process and the idea of working with someone who's just going to ask you questions rather than give you advice. And then we continued through the 6 months of each cohort to have monthly coaching skills workshops, as well as peer coaching workshops where the coachees got together and learned to coach each other, and as a way of building a networked learning community of early career faculty members. They had 6 1-hour coaching meetings with an assigned coach. Specifically, the coaches were from a different department to reduce potential conflict of interest and also to broaden their potential network. And they were encouraged to follow this workbook, which includes a lot of information about coaching, and also some structured coaching. But we also recognize that many people would use it as a beginning point, use it for the reflections for the coachee, and then sort of go from there to really organically developing that coaching relationship. We evaluated our coaching effectiveness using SenseMaker, which is a proprietary mixed qualitative and quantitative data collection tool. If you're interested in that, this QR code will send you to an article about SenseMaker. We enrolled 3 cohorts in 2019 through 2021, including 29 early career faculty members in years 1 through 7 on the faculty. And for that purpose, we recruited 15 early career coaches who were at the rank of at least associate professor, most of whom coached in more than one cohort. You will note that this timeframe spanned the pandemic, and indeed we transitioned from in-person to virtual in March 2020 and adapted our surveys to ask some questions about that. So what did we find? Well, one of the things that we were worried about was, because we were using non-certified coaches who were very good mentors, would they be in giving advice mode, or would they be able to be in asking questions and supporting and challenging mode? And so we asked our coachees at the end to choose a slider point on the line between my coach never stopped talking and I did all the talking. And what you'll see is, we were very delighted to see that the coachees in general said they did most of the talking. The coach did some talking, so it wasn't that the coachees were doing all of the talking and were just being asked to solve their own problems, but it looks like the coaches listened and found out what the coachee was worried about and helped them understand what their professional identity, their goals, what it is that they wanted to accomplish. This is another SenseMaker tool where there's 3 areas on a triangle, and you put the dot closest to kind of where you think the importance of each of those is. And so we asked, because of my participation in the coaching program, I feel more prepared to take steps to create the career I want, build a sense of camaraderie and allyship with my fellow faculty, and advocate for myself to my department chair. If all 3 of those are accomplished, you expect the density to be highest right in the center. What you can see here is that the density is highest a little bit closer towards taking the steps I want and building a sense of camaraderie. And that makes sense for the form of our program, which is all around networking and figuring out what's my professional identity, what are my goals, what do I want to do next. We then asked them about on two axes. First, confidence from low to high, and then on the y-axis, clarity from low to high, to indicate the clarity of their understanding and their ability to navigate their career. And in this left-hand graph is the data from the pre-test where we asked them this question. And what you see is there were some of them who had some confidence and clarity about what they want to do. And then there were some who were sure they could do it, but they weren't sure where they were going. Others who were clear how to get there, but weren't really confident they could get there. And then we definitely had some people who were like, I don't know who I am. I don't know where I'm going. And even if I did know where I was going, I wouldn't know how to get there. At the end, we asked them the exact same question. And what we found was a dramatic shift into that upper corner of high clarity and high confidence, and really only two who are just slightly into the needing more clarity or needing more confidence side of things. So we think this is a really compelling story about the effectiveness of our internal coaches who are not certified, but just have some coaching skills training. We did ask about the COVID-19 pandemic and going to virtual and how much it impacted the experience, with the slider from so much I got nothing out of the program to it had zero impact on my experience. And what we saw was, yep, there was probably a little bit of an impact, but the virtual worked really well. And what was really interesting is even as we go back to in-person for the one-on-one coaching, our workshops have stayed virtual because we get so much better participation in those virtual workshops, much higher attendance where people don't have to cross campus. We did learn that the kickoff meeting is really important to have in person. That's 3 to 4 hours where we teach people about what coaching is and also give the dyads a chance to get to know each other and go through an exercise in making commitments and ground rules for the relationship. I just want to share with you a couple of comments from the qualitative side of things. Here's the first one. I am now taking proactive steps to ensure that I don't wake up in 5 years and wonder what in the world I have been doing. My coach was also terrific at challenging me and reflecting for me in a realistic way, not just making it all seem rosy. Thank you. I feel a new lease on my career and life. If I had not gone through this, I might have been looking at a new career at this point. And the program provided me with help in ways that I wasn't expecting. I was very much on the fence to make a big change from an academic career with a balance of research and clinical practice to one that is only clinical. Additionally, I was strongly considering leaving the institution altogether. Coaching helped me to navigate significant challenges and engage in a more rewarding way with my staff. One of the things that we learned from these qualitative statements was that coaching actually may be a really valuable tool in retention. We help people understand how they could fit in an environment that can be challenging and made them much more positive about their career going forward. In summary, we created a grassroots coaching program using experienced educators who learn coaching skills in monthly workshops, but are not formally certified. And we found it is effective in increasing faculty clarity, confidence, and efficacy in navigating their careers, and also in actually transmitting some coaching skills to the coaches. We designed the program so that it could be easily implemented at other academic health centers. The materials are available on our website, which you can also get by taking the spot at this QR code. I look forward to our discussion, and please feel free to reach out to me if you would like my input or if you have ideas on how we can make our program better. Thank you so much.
Matt Wixon. I'm an assistant professor at the University of Michigan, and I have the good fortune of moderating our Q&A here for the next 15 minutes. Doctors Ihai, Manuel, and Hop, thank you for that inspirational and thoughtful presentations that you just presented. I'd invite anyone to please submit questions into the chat, and I will monitor and moderate it. But I have the first question here. A common theme that came up in all the presentations was the importance of diversifying leadership to achieve these aims. Could you please discuss ways you've seen it done well in terms of diversifying leadership, either policies or procedures, and also some barriers that you may have encountered as well?
Well, maybe I'll start. I think we're all a little bit struck dumb because I don't know that any of us have seen gigantic successes in that area. There's certainly been small steps. I think one of the things that we've been looking at in coaching, and our program's pretty young, so we don't have anybody who's rocketed to leadership. We have also coaching programs for our medical students, and we just started our second cohort of mid-career faculty. And then we started a mentor training program where we sort of talk about coaching as a technique for mentors. So we're trying to sort of develop this kind of coaching and mentoring culture at the institution, which I think is one way to diversify leadership. The second thing is we specifically assign coachees to someone who is not in their department, which was intended as a way to reduce potential conflicts of interest and to make sure that, that there's sort of safety in that relationship. But one of the things that we found is what it's really done is created network connections across the campus, or really mostly across the School of Medicine. We're sort of expanding to the health campus as well. And I think that expanded network gives people more access to potential future leadership. I think when we were planning the mentor training program, one of our coaches reflected that she feels like in the early career coaching program, she spends 80% of her time undoing the harm caused by mentors. And I thought that was kind of stinging and also maybe true. And so I think the idea that we use coaching to help people figure out who they are and where they're trying to go, and also help them figure out how to navigate that system so that they can get to leadership, recognizing there's a lot of barriers. And then the last thing we do, inspired by Odie, is we actually have some bias and diversity curriculum training embedded in our coaching training workshops.
And I'll follow along with Harriet. I think one of the things that was super helpful was at UCSF, we attended these DEI leadership training sessions that allowed us to get in contact with folks who are interested in the same topics, who were part of otolaryngology or general surgery or ophthalmology. And so they learned what we were doing, and we were able to partner together and actually try to make a curriculum happen within our perioperative environment. I think that's key in collaborating with key stakeholders. And in terms of barriers that may be encountered, because you can imagine developing a curriculum that is not the status quo for a lot of different programs. And a lot of questions that get asked are, well, is anyone else doing this? And so really trying to navigate and show the importance of the presence of a curriculum such as this, where individuals get to speak about their identities in curated safe spaces. And we actually invite conversations across different disciplines. I think those are really important and really driving forward what you want to do with regard to this.
I think on a practical level, when I think about what I've seen that's been successful in this area, so I give a shout out to our department chair at UCSF, Michael Grapper. He's really done a great job in helping to increase visibility of faculty, not just within the department, but across the School of Medicine, and really advocating for just positions and visibility across the campus, which has been great for our department as a whole, and also for bolstering people up and preparing them for leadership positions. I was going to say, and also just, it's been said for many years, like every time there's a position open or there's opportunities, to make sure that you have a very broad group of applicants, and to not just settle for the first few applicants for a position, but to really reach out and make sure you have a diverse group applying and considering themselves and putting themselves in the pool.
Thank you for those thoughtful answers. I'm gonna build off a question, and I invite anyone who has a question, please put it in the chat or raise your hand. But there, Harriet, you mentioned the idea of the burden of work, and I think that can be applicable to to all of these topics we're talking about. How do we support faculty and leaders in this space?
Well, and I will say, many of you know that one of my passions is revising promotion and tenure criteria. And, when I had the chance to do that about 7 years ago at Utah, we baked in really strong language about how mentoring can get you promoted. And I will say that is a first step, and it is starting to change the culture. But the reality is the promotion and tenure committees at every level include a lot of people who have difficulty thinking that mentorship should count as some kind of scholarship or work or contribution. And so I think it's a slow process. And I have to say, I have this question because I think I want everybody to be a mentor. We are doing mentor training programs. I recognize the people who show up for a mentor training are good mentors to begin with. I'm not reaching the people who are either bad mentors or are just abdicating their role as mentors. When we did our mentor training, we had someone who said this should be required for all new faculty members and sort of on a recurring basis. And I am hesitant to say we're going to add yet another required module to your year. At the same time, I think there are people who either naturally or through dedication or both are phenomenal mentors. And I think one of the things that we need to do is sort of professionalize our mentoring corps and say anyone can be a mentor, and here's the people who are really good at it that you might want to work with. I think that's great for career mentoring. In research mentoring, the challenge is how do you match up the good mentors with the people who are productive researchers, and so recruit people to their lab. There are productive researchers who are phenomenal mentors, and there are some who are not phenomenal mentors. And so I think, so I love the idea of mentoring up because I see so many people choose a lab where they're miserable, and I think, why are you doing that?
Great. George, I see your hands raised.
Yes, thank you, Matt. First of all, I just wanted to thank all of you for a wonderful panel. I really, really appreciate it. It was very informative. And I just wanted to follow up on an important point, and that is the multidisciplinary engagement, because we could do a lot of work within our anesthesiology departments, but we're embedded in a very large, complex network. And I think it's great to think about how we can better partner with others, because the welcoming and inclusive environment has to be broad. I mean, we touch on so many different specialties. We work in so many different areas. And so I think it's important for us not only to do the work that we need to do within our departments, but to reach out, to connect, to get involved in institutional endeavors, because otherwise we'll be, however much we transform our internal culture, we'll be sending out people to harsher environments, and that happens. It still happens at our institution. And something I've also realized is that it's not just one culture change. There are many subcultures. You've got tens of thousands of people in these large academic medical centers. So anyway, I thought that was a great point, and it's a reminder to me that we really need to be outward facing. This needs to be a collective activity for our anesthesiologists and our colleagues to find a welcoming environment in academic medicine. Thank you.
And George, I love that. And I also want to add that one of the things, so obviously when you go out in the world, you can get burned. And so helping people be prepared for that. But I will also say what I have observed in anesthesiology is that many people who are underrepresented in anesthesiology leadership have found ways to leadership by leaving their department, working in the dean's office, working in other areas. And so I think our specialty needs to own improving ourselves, and we also need to improve the institution. We have to recognize the need to improve the institution. But I am among people who found a refuge outside my department because I wasn't necessarily finding leadership inside my department, and that those people, especially in sort of my age group, are legion. Odie and Solmaz, you must have something to say about these things.
Well, I wanted to see, I see that, I don't know if I'm saying this right, Yefan or Yafan?
Yeah, Dr. Liang has a question.
Yeah, actually, my name is Yafan Liang. I was a former MGH graduate, and it was nice to see a lot of familiar faces. Now I'm down in Houston, warm weather. I was excited to participate in this meeting as my first year membership. Anyway, I just want to make a comment on the importance of mentee-driven mentorship, because this is so important. You can have people, you try to mentor them, but if they are not driven, it's very, very difficult. I'm just wondering if there's any method of how to motivate these mentees to be actively involved in mentoring.
So I think it simply just doesn't occur to many people to just take their mentorship relationships by the rein themselves. And so I know each of our residency classes for at least the past 6 years, we have talked to them and done a presentation, done a workshop on mentee-driven mentorship and how they have to figure out what they need and they have to seek it out. Anyway, so we talk about all of these points with them. And I think we have to proactively sometimes tell mentees that it is their responsibility and they are driving the relationship. And so many people say, oh, that makes sense. It didn't even occur to me. I thought I just had to like sit here and be the pawn.
I love that comment. Yeah, I think setting expectation is very important. A lot of mentors are very, very busy. So I'm mentoring a medical student and who is really driven, but he is very persistent. He sends follow-up emails. Sometimes it's not because we don't like them or we don't want to mentor them, just because we are really busy and then we might forget that email. So the driven, I think, is so important, and set up the expectation is very important. And also I think it's also very important for people to realize the difference between the mentorship and the sponsorship. This is a term I learned in the last few years, but not previously. I think sponsorship is very important to ensure your success.
Thank you for those
and
comments.
Also, I think, to ask people to sponsor you. Like I tell my mentees, like, you will see something that you think you qualify for, or you will see a position, or you will see an award or an opportunity. Like, forward me that email. Let me know that it's on your radar and you think it fits, because it might not occur to me in the moment. It might go through my inbox and, not make it to the top. So ask people to sponsor you too, and have, your mentors and also your peer mentors too.
I like what Salmaz just mentioned about actually just setting a tone of, well, I may not see this opportunity, but please feel free to let me know so that I can sponsor you, because of the imposter syndrome across all these different learners that we encounter is so real. And so while they may see these opportunities, they may not feel comfortable approaching someone who's of a different higher power hierarchy to say, hey, would you like to sponsor me? So I think by setting the tone from the get-go is going to be really, really important in order to really facilitate that sponsorship and mitigating disparate sponsorships that occur, actually.
And I will add that I think academic medicine culture tends to be fairly directive and sort of, this is what you should do. And I think it creates in our trainees and early career faculty and this sort of sense of, I just need to do what people tell me to do. And so I think this direct education to say, no, you need to take ownership. You need to, and that's one of the things our coaching program in the medical school, in the medical students is really trying to address, is the idea that, no, you can decide who you are, you can frame who you are, you can ask for what you need. And I don't think that's necessarily the message that they, it's not a spoken message necessarily, but it's just the experienced life. Oh, I should do what people tell me to do. I should not ask for what I want. So I think education of people, of mentees, is such an important component of this.
Well, thank you. And I think that is a final great thought to end on. Unfortunately, we're at the end of our time, but I want to thank all of you again for your fantastic presentations, insight, and expertise. And for the participants, I hope that this was an inspirational time for you. And we look forward to further engagement on these important issues within our field and beyond. Thank you all for your time, and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Matt, for taking on moderating in a virtual environment. It's a tough job. You did it fabulously.
My pleasure.